This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we are recording. This is the IT 210 session. This is the start of week 5. That's excellent. That means you've got exams this week. Don't be worried when you see the exam scores. There's some challenges with recognizing correct answers. Punctuation can affect it, capitalization, not using exactly the right terminology. So I'm aware of all this, and I fix it by regrading all the exams. You can't just fix it in the exam bank. So just wanted you to know so you don't freak out if you get some score that's lower than you would expect, because if you got something right and the exam bank says no, you got it wrong, don't freak out. Don't freak out. All right. I graded what did I grade today? I graded the discussions today. Good job on confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The 3 goals of cybersecurity. Tonight, I'm going to have a little fun. I hinted last week, I said something about trying to run some AI locally on my system. And I am. Because, as it turns out, the, what do they say, the minimum hardware requirements to run some of the AI systems out there are wrong. And so I did a little digging, a little investigation, and found I was able to run DeepSeek. Okay. I know DeepSeek are all excited. Everyone's excited about DeepSeek. Let's take a look at what it takes to make it work, in case you can run it yourself. All right. So I put together this little article on running DeepSeek on old RTX GPUs. Now you've all designed your own dream computer, and many of you were putting 4090s in them and 3080s. I mean, I'm amazed you didn't just say 5090, because they came out, they're already available. And some of you went for more modest systems. I've got something in between all that. My computer, I have a 2060, an RTX 2060. So it's old, but there's a special reason that I have it. I have it because it has 12 gigabytes of RAM. And the reason I needed 12 was for AI. 8 gigabytes of video RAM is just not enough to run a lot of the AI models. It's not enough to resize things or create images or video beyond like really small ones that you have to then upscale and upscale and upscale to get to full resolution, or like something you could put on YouTube or Instagram or whatever. It's fun playing around with multimedia. So DeepSeek. The reason I can run it is because there's some new technology that is making AI models smaller, more portable, able to run on smaller systems. Some of it's not all that new, but some of it does appear to be. There's 2 angles to it, and one angle seems newer than the other. Let's put it that way. All along, you've been able to run a process on AI models called quantization, and that's where you take the parameters of the model, and there's billions and billions of parameters. Most of the data in a model is from the parameters, and the model is going to be really, really big because of these billions and billions of parameters. I'm looking at it, and you're looking at it too if you're watching this. You can see this table here. It says that DeepSeek R1. Keep in mind there are DeepSeek R3. So this is the R1 information. 671 billion parameters. That's pretty big, right? So but you gotta know how big a parameter is to actually calculate the size. So if a parameter is 1 byte, that's 671 billion bytes. So you can figure out, how much memory that takes up. And this table actually shows it. So I don't actually have to figure it out. Figure it out. So you see this VRAM requirement column. I wonder if we can zoom in here. Not exactly. 436 gigabytes. Well, that's crazy, right? So multi-GPU setup, yeah. You need a server farm of large, expensive NVIDIA GPUs to run this model. So I'm not running that. I instead took a look at these distilled and quantized models. I know they're quantized because this says 4-bit and the basic model is 8. So they've cut down the precision of the parameters. So if a parameter had, a value, we'll just use an example using floating point numbers. Maybe the value is 7.3562891. A lot of digits, right? You don't necessarily need all those digits. They don't add that much precision or accuracy to the calculations of the model. They add some, but maybe not that much to justify the model being twice or 4 times the memory size that it needs to be, and costing so much more money to run, right? And having to have so much more expensive equipment. So maybe my model 7.35, whatever I said, maybe that's all I need. Maybe I just need 7.35 and not all those other digits. So I ignore them, cut them off, and now my model is smaller. That is quantization. Now the distilling process, that's a little more complex to describe, but we can still describe it just fine. Distillation, ooh, here we go. It's a type of training. You have a parent model, and then you have student models. Students, or a teacher model, I should say. Teachers and students. It's a good analogy. The students learn from the teacher. The teacher can answer all kinds of questions and all that. The students, the analogy I use is they're just learning how to pass the test, okay? Getting the basics down, right? So training in this fashion, training a model to just know the same questions and answers as the teacher model speeds up the training of the distilled model. And yet it still retains the ability to answer those questions. So that's kind of neat. Now, how do you really assess all that stuff? It's hard, but people have come up with some types of, say, some standard testing. There's like math exams. Now they have legal exams, medical exams. Like ChatGPT can pass a medical exam. Interesting stuff. So using the standard testing, they're able to score these distilled models and the quantized models and see how they compare to the original models and know if the process is working or not. Turns out it works pretty well. Now, back to running these things. So as you can see, I put my system here, my 2060. Now this is important. I've got 48 gigabytes of RAM. That's a lot of RAM. I'm running an old CPU, a Ryzen 5. I am running everything off of, well, I have several drives, but the system that I'm running this in and the model is running on an NVMe drive. So it's running on the fastest drive that you could have. I serve the model using a system called Olama. Serving the model, what's that mean? When you have like a web server, you serve web pages. Well, when you have a model server, you serve models. It gives an interface to the model so that you can access it from various types of clients, including over the web. So if you've used the DeepSeek interface online or ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or anything, on Facebook now is all AI search. If you use Mistral, there's tons of these things. They pretty much all have web interfaces. Okay, so the web interface talks to the wrapper around the model. The wrapper is what is in the thing that's serving the model. So the model's running, but it can't communicate to the outside world unless something comes through the wrapper from whatever client it is, like a website. So the data comes from the website. Here comes my question for the AI model, my prompt to it, hits the wrapper, and the wrapper then passes it into the model itself. The model does its magic, out comes an answer, and then the answer is transformed by the wrapper to the appropriate protocol to send back to the client. In the case of a website, it's some chunk of data that shows up in a web page. It's most likely going to be some, byte stream that some JavaScript can manage and make look nice. Add all those extra features like copying and highlighting and maybe some text formatting, things like that. That's all done. That's like icing on the cake, right? You already got the cake. The cake's the model that can do all this stuff. The icing is all the little things around it that make it prettier. So what I found out is if you look at these requirements, you see how much VRAM is required for like R1, 7B. 7B means 7 billion parameters. A lot less than 671, right? So the memory requirement is dramatically less as well. It's like 100th. You can see the ratio, right? Almost 700 to 7 is 100 to 1. 436 to 4.5, around 100 to 1. Now, for some reason, the tables that people have put online all say you need these faster RTX computers. See all the stuff in the red circle here, or RTX graphics cards. And more memory, 12 gigabytes. Well, they say 12 or higher. Okay. That's not bad. Could you do it with less? Yeah, you can. I've done it. I know what these things need. I know you don't need a 4080 with 16 gigabytes of video RAM to run this model, and I can prove it to you. Let's see what else is in here. Oh, yeah. So my graphics card, you can buy it used right now for 150 bucks. These are still $1,000, over $1,000, super expensive. Should be a video here, but you don't need that. I don't know where it went. Talked about in the billions. There's these other models you can run, the dumb model, like if you run the 1.5 billion parameter model, it doesn't have the details in its answers. It some answers it just doesn't have it all. It just doesn't know the material. And others it might know something, but it can't give you a detailed answer. So we've pretty much looked at this. Okay. So now we're going to look at running the AI model on my system. We'll take a look at the performance on my system, and that's actually what the video is all about. Okay, so we're going to switch over to viewing some performance meters on my system. Things you need to know how to do, by the way. I'll explain that to you. Okay, right now I am sharing the task manager. Okay, you get to that by right-clicking on your toolbar, okay, and then choosing task manager. There's a lot of different things the task manager shows you. This is great stuff for new IT people to know how to do and understand. This shows you all the things running on the computer. It shows you how much CPU they're using, how much memory, if they're using the disk or the network. You can see I'm running virtual machine here, Windows subsystem for Linux. Microsoft Edge runs a tons of processes. I have like 5 windows open. It's running all these, ridiculous amount of processes. At least some it's running efficiently, right? Low leaves mean it's using low power. Some antivirus stuff is running. The graphics card stuff. Other software, this and that. I don't know why this is running. Let's kill it. Hopefully that didn't kill the call. Oh, it didn't like that. Started right back up. Curious, what's this about? Something to do with Windows subsystem for Linux. Interesting. Go to meeting. That's what we're using right now. Just tons of stuff. Okay. Some Linux things. Okay, and then, so this shows you the things that are running. You can get some extra info about them. You can group by type, apps, background processes. So I'm running very few apps, but background processes, tons of them. Then Windows operating system processes, tons of them. Okay. Now, performance. This is more interesting. So here you see how much CPU I'm using. Click on that. And you'll see that I've got a dozen logical processors, 6 cores. What's that mean? Well, my cores are actual physical compute cores on my CPU. I've got 6 of them. Each of those cores can run 2 logical processors. This is the equivalent of what Intel calls hyperthreading. So if hyperthreading, you get 2 threads per core. So this AMD processor supports the equivalent of Intel hyperthreading. That's why I have a dozen logical processors. You'll see that virtualization is enabled because it's turned on in my UEFI, right? You can see the size of these CPU caches. And then, by speed, the CPU, it's running very fast right now, 4.4. It's running pretty hot. It's not doing much, but it's running pretty hot. Not a lot going on with the CPU. It's mostly having to do with, I'm guessing it's probably mostly GoToMeeting. We can look at that. If I click here, we'll see the top running process, and you see it's Microsoft Edge, and that's where GoToMeeting's running. It's inside Edge. And it's using all the memory, virtual machine, and again, Microsoft Edge. Now, memory, systems use what you give it, so up to a point. So I'm currently using 13 gig. Seems like quite a lot, but I've got 48, so that's fine. You can see the speed of it. It's dual memory, right? DIMMs. 3,200 mega transactions per second. So I'm going to say it is. My hard drive's doing nothing, basically nothing on any of my drives. My Wi-Fi is doing a bit because I'm communicating with you right now. Not a lot though, 3 megabits per second. Now we get to the GPU. So it's not using much memory. There's the dedicated GPU memory. Now the reason this shows this shared GPU memory, it's able to use the memory from my operating system. Okay. And that's important to the process that we're about to run. Now it's doing some 3D stuff. It's got something to do with the video that's happening right now. It's not running too hot. Not really. 70 or 80 or a little higher. That would be hot. But it's going to warm up in a second because we're going to turn on the AI model. So we're going to switch windows. Oh, actually, it's boring to watch the AI model just turn on. I'm going to turn it on right now in a different window, but I want you to watch what happens to the GPU utilization, the GPU memory, and also what happens with the CPU. So here we go. So Olama is already technically running. It's like a service, but you have to tell it what model you want to run. So I just told it what model to run, and it's kicking into gear. The CPU has jumped up a bit. Takes a little while to get started up. The model has to get loaded into memory. And you see, look at the memory now in the GPU, 9.9 gigabytes out of 12. So it just took off a big chunk. And then it's not really using any of the shared GPU, but system memory did jump up as well. That jumped up almost 10, right? So that jumped up like 9 gigabytes, which is kind of interesting because I don't see shared GPU memory happening. So it just needs CPU memory. All right, it's running now. So we're going to switch windows over to the AI. It's a very bare bones AI. It's like a command line interface. Okay. So this is the window. Like I said, it is command line. Now, it doesn't mean this is the only way to interact with it. It turns out that I can interact with it through other interfaces. This one's pretty simple because I just type right into the window and then the answer comes back. But if you were, I don't know, going to integrate the AI with some other application, then you would want to interact with it a different way, right? Similar to that, you have that web wrapper that I was telling you about, where you could have something serving the model, and then there's a wrapper around it, and then clients out there that talk through the wrapper to the model. The data passes back and forth. So we'll ask it a question. It doesn't know current events. It's not connected to the internet. I don't know what month they finished the training on it, but it was a few months ago, I think. So you kind of ask it, questions. Well, like I said, not current events. So historical information, mathematical information. Though you're not going to get a lot of good Chinese history. This is DeepSeek. This is a Chinese model. The Chinese government controls some of the answers. Yeah, exactly. They control history by changing it through what this model is trained on and what it can answer. But for a lot of things, it will work just fine. And I can run it locally. What's that? Let's talk about that for a second, why that matters. I'm not sending my data anywhere. It stays on my machine. Okay. This is private, secret, confidential, whatever you want to call it. Think of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It's all running on my own machine. So I've got the confidentiality piece, right? Now, if I can secure my own machine, then I've got the integrity piece too. Somebody has not manipulated my model. Just running for myself, you know, my machine's pretty available. It did have some startup problems this week because NVIDIA put out some bad drivers and my computer won't start up properly with the latest NVIDIA drivers. They screwed something up. I figured it out and rolled back to a Windows system restore point, and everything's fine now. I'll just wait to install those drivers until they fix their problem. Okay, let's ask a question. Let's probe into computer history. All right, I'm asking you about MMX CPUs from Intel. This is some technology from the 90s, critical technology. So what's nice about this model is it kind of explains its thinking process. And so you can read through this output and see what it was doing. You can get a lot of output for some answers, some questions. Okay, so it's done all of its reasoning process, and then once you see these numbered items, these bullets, then it's giving you answers. Now, if we look at, oh, you're still looking at, what are you, oh no, you're looking at this window now. Yeah, that's good. And if I look at the task manager, the GPU had jumped up, the CPU had jumped up. I'll switch over quick like so you can still see what it was doing before it goes away. So you can see the GPU was really high for a while, then came back down. The CPU was really high. I mean, look at this. All the cores jumped up. I mean, that's something. Seeing a dozen logical processors hop up like that, answering this question. Okay, back to the DeepSeek window. This is running in the Windows subsystem for Linux. It's Ubuntu, okay, like the latest version 22 or something, if I was really to dig into it. So here's the answer, and this is a pretty good answer. Talks about SIMD, very important, single instruction, multiple data. So it let CPUs do parallel processing. So MMX was great for processing audio and video, and in the 90s, it was a critical advance in support of video gaming and scientific computing. Now you see enhanced multimedia, so on and so on. Video conferencing, it didn't work well in the 90s. You could do some audio streaming, but all these things were important. And then that technology for parallel processing in the CPUs just kept getting better and better and better. So this is a huge step forward then. So now, there you go, AI. It's working. It's running locally. That's kind of cool. So you can create your own little, AI intelligent agent if you wanted to. And you may be wondering, well, how can I do that? Remember that part about integration and wrappers? You can ask it questions. You can automate the asking of the questions, get the answers back. Automate doing something with those answers. Yeah, I mean, what can you do? I'll show you. I'll show you what the integrations are on the DeepSeek website, and I'll tell you something clever they did. I think they use the same API that OpenAI published, for their software development kit, so that anything that talks to OpenAI could also talk to DeepSeek. And it's really just a question of changing the URL, the endpoint of the service that you are talking to. Let's take a look at that. Once I find what I'm looking for, and we'll switch the screen over. There we go. So what can you do with AI? I mean, you can use it as a search engine. You probably figured that out. People use it for research. But what can you really do that's even more significant? So here's a lot of applications that are integrated with ChatGPT, but because that same interface is also supported by DeepSeek, you can integrate with DeepSeek. So there's all kinds of chat things. I don't know why people have so many, but they do. But here's one that's a little different. This lets DeepSeek manipulate your notes, tasks, calendars, and to-do list. Oh, just like on WeChat. That's given quite a lot of power to DeepSeek. Knows everything about what you're doing. Interesting. Quickly reading papers. So this is probably a paper summarization. This is cool. A translator. Translate RSS feeds into your language. Might take a look at that. This claims to be a thoughtful, intelligent assistant. I don't know. Maybe. I gotta look at this. It says AI assistant for producer. What producer? What? Find out what Cherry Studio is. It's a desktop client for using different large language models. So nothing real different. Video subtitling. Okay, that's kind of cool. So part of the translate subtitles. A dictionary. Okay. I wonder if this thing can speak Spanish. I'm just curious. I haven't tried any translation stuff. Let's find out. It should be a simple answer. It's churning it away. Well, oh, here we go. It's trying to figure it out. Productivity tool for Mac OS. Doesn't say what it really does. PHP client. Okay, so a PHP library that integrates with the DeepSeek. Okay, it looks like it might be able to. So I'm going to try to translate something. I'm going to translate a phrase and see what happens. So I'm actually translating something into German since I know German a little better than Spanish. Just asking it to say, what time is it? And wie viel ist es jetzt is something to what I would expect. Wie viel Zeit haben Sie? What time do you have? Okay. It's a very polite way to say it. Was ist die Uhrzeit? What is the clock time? Yeah. Wie viel ist es? Okay. That's the one I was kind of expecting to see. So, man, I mean, that's just a simple phrase, but I hadn't even thought about it. Yeah. Now I'm asking it to translate the Chinese. Okay, while it's doing that, let's see. Chinese stock data viewer. I wouldn't invest in the Chinese stock market. Big AGI. Well, that's interesting. Artificial general intelligence. But we don't have that, so I don't know why they're claiming they do. ASP.NET, more programming wrappers, AI coding tool. Yeah, it writes Chinese. Even gave me the Chinese characters for what time is it. Great. AI agent frameworks. This is cool. Orchestration, automation. If this happens, do that. Monitor this, read that. You could have this reading, like a human news editor reads stuff and decides what's breaking news, right? What is breaking news? Well, it's what somebody's picking as breaking news. They think it's important, so it's their job to pick what's important. Maybe you have some different ideas about what's breaking news. Maybe you want to feed your AI model a bunch of news from, some other website, some other country, feeding it information from websites in a foreign language and have it monitoring those sites on a regular basis, reading the data, and then sending you text information. Maybe you want to know, get a text alert if there's an earthquake in Pakistan or Turkey, right? Well, might be good to know if you got family in a place like that. So an AI agent could be monitoring various news sources, might get you that information faster than having it translated through different languages and making his way to America and showing up on CNN or something. What else? Solana, yes, of course. Crypto-related stuff. Synthetic data curation. Okay. Synthetic data is important for model training, and creating synthetic data is also useful for programming in general. A lot of times you need to populate a data set before you go live, and so you could have something create synthetic data for you. And I bet, I bet the AI model can do that really well. I'm going to ask it for 5 rows of synthetic data to include first name, last name, phone number, birth date. Birthday, that's fine. And age. Just see what happens. So it's off doing its thing while I'm still talking to you. That's a time saver right there if I was doing something useful with my AI agent. Okay, browser extensions, translators. Okay, bunch of translators. Language translators, right? Visual Studio Code extensions. Open source autopilot. Okay. Not exactly sure what. An open source autopilot is generates, refactors, and explains entire section of code. Okay, that I understand. Um, you can learn the code faster if you have the AI there to teach you how to do it. Oh, it's done with my data, so I'm going to show you the synthetic data that it generated. So there it is. Nothing, crazy. Oh, and because I'd asked it to speak Spanish earlier, it decided to give me Spanish last names, Spanish family names. Phone numbers, that's all good for synthetic, and the 555, right? That is not an actual area code, so none of those are legitimate phone numbers. So the birthdays are all kind of odd. Why they're all 1990, I don't know. And all the ages are wrong. So if you were born in 1990, you'd either be 33 or 34, I guess, right now. I suppose you could even be 35. So I guess 34 or 35. But not 31 or 32 or 30. Interesting. I don't know why I got the birthdays wrong. That's kind of funny. But anyway, something to think about when you're looking at your synthetic data. You might have to clean it up, right? Back to integration. NeoVim. Vim is an editor. So NeoVim must be a new editor. What is it? Vim-based text editor, hyper extensible. Everybody's trying to make a better mousetrap all the time. Yeah, okay. You can use it as an editor for writing code. All right. And so the DeepSeek integrates with it. AI powered coding. It helps you, right? Back to those comments about AI helping you code. So if you have code you don't understand, you're looking at a library. You could ask the AI to help explain it to you. There may be some complex code that you just can't read properly, or it's in a different language or something. You're trying to figure it out. Hey, have the AI explain it, or it can just like generalize and tell you what a certain library does, or find me a library. I need to do this, and I don't have time to fool around. Find me the best libraries that do, A, B, and C, functions A, B, and C, and the systems can do it. Now, can they write you good code? Not yet. They don't really write good code. Can they write code? Yes, they can write code. I could ask DeepSeek right now. Let's see. We'll write it in Python. Okay. Write hello world in Python, assuming it knows Python. Oh, and I typed it the wrong way. There we go. So DeepSeek is now writing some code. While it does that, all kinds of other SDKs, ways to talk with it. There's a code reviewer. That's cool. DeepSeek code review. Sure, why not? It already wrote the application. It did not do a good job though. Huh. It assumes that you were running in the in the Python environment as opposed to writing a Python function. So we're going to write the same program in Java, and I'll show you what it's been doing. It's churning away. There you see it. Working, working, working. And it explains its rationale, which is nice. Explainable AI is important. So it's getting quite a few different ways, ways to run it, compile it. Yeah, there's a compiler command. There's the command to run it. It explains why it put what it put where, and then here's the actual Java class code right there. That works, I can tell you. More complicated code, my experience so far is that the different AI models can get you close. You can say, hey, write this code for me, write this, write that, and it will try. Probably, if it's something complicated, it's probably not going to run, but it may be close to running, so you might be able to fix it. Okay. I can imagine it being good at code review. Code review is a simpler, well-defined process, especially if you follow certain coding standards. It could help enforce those standards, which is a good idea. Makes for cleaner code, easier to read, better documented. If you're following what it says, it might be able to write your documentation for you, which is interesting. Because if it can read the functions, then it may be able to write the function documentation. I'm going to ask it to do that right now. Let's see, write the Java doc for the class you created. Let's see what it does. See if it gets the formatting right. Well, there you go. Tells you what Java doc is. That's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. So that's helpful, honestly, because if you had a ton of code and you didn't know how it worked, you inherited somebody's code library and it was really badly documented, you could just feed it to an AI system. It'd read the code and write all the documentation for you. And then you could run it through a processor to generate the files that you can then load on like a website for all the code APIs, and then read them. It'll be easier for you to read. And if it's depending on how sophisticated the AI agent is, you may be able to create the appropriate reverse engineered diagrams of the code, like a unified modeling language. Yeah, interesting stuff. You could imagine doing it with a database too, reverse engineering a database, generating documentation and relationship diagrams and how the database all comes together and how it interacts with each other. This is a powerful feature. Yes, very powerful. Let's see, what else can DeepSeek do? Yeah, the code review is, wonder what language they wrote it with, though. That's the real question. I'm guessing it's Python. I don't actually see it. I don't actually see what language it supports, which is kind of silly, because it's not going to support everything, I don't think. Hust CER. Interesting. Maybe this will tell me. No. Huh. Well, does something. But that's pretty cool. You know, code review is a valuable function. Um, so if you can do code review and automate it, that's great, because you kick off the code review automatically. It's triggered by checking code into your source code control system at GitHub. So GitHub has hooks built in, so you can commit code and it will fire off some script, and that script could call this piece of code that initiates the AI-powered code review. That's really good, assuming it's a good code review, right? And then if the app that's agentizing uh, the code review is good, then it should be able to issue problems, warnings, alerts, right? Maybe put things in uh, a bug database, right? If something goes wrong, some things to get fixed, task list here or there, saying, okay, time to fix, you submitted some code and there's some review problems with it. We're not going to merge it until you fix these. So it can control all that. So the tendrils of AI are very powerful, and having AI SDKs for integrating between your application and an AI system. Well, that's how you do it, right? You use these foundational building blocks that let you talk and process data between the two, and really build some advanced things. Speed up the whole process of how things work. So some of you may have a computer powerful enough to run DeepSeek at home. If you took a look at the article that I had up earlier, I'll bring it back up and I'll put it in the chat. It'll point you in the right direction. It's not about the step-by-step instructions. Other people have the step-by-step instructions on how to run Olama to serve your model, but it's definitely something you can do. If you've got at least a 2060 RTX, you could run this stuff. And you may be able to run it on even older ones if you're running one of the smaller models that doesn't require as much memory. So AI, got to try it out, and not on your papers, but you still got to know how this stuff works. So you got to find ways to try it out legitimately, and ensure that you know what's going on, because other people do, right? And you're going to be competing against them the rest of your life. So you need to know how these things work. All right. Hope you do well in your midterms. And that's it for tonight.